application that we're looking at here we call ConTXT, and it's designed to assist with the review of mobile data, as well as some other formats sort of in that general realm. And this is a tool that we've been working on across a couple of different iterations that was really driven from the desire to be able to review mobile data in a similar fashion to how we would review other document types, emails and loose documents, etc. And we've worked on the tool for I would say over the last year, where it's really caught on, year and a half. And we've gone through a couple of different iterations of this, beginning with just being able to present the textual content of messages all the way through to how we're now rendering them and actually combining some of our other applications with this technology to to further it along. So I'll go ahead and I'll get started with the demo if that's okay for you folks.
Yep, that works. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so what we're looking at right now, we've already populated this workspace with the messages that we've gone ahead and extracted out. From a process perspective, we've written our own custom parsing tools that take a forensic image of a cell phone and ultimately take that image from Cellbrite, where it's exported out to an XML format. And we've written our own custom parsing agents that go through and pull the messages and tokenize them out. We handle a number of different elements, ranging from field populations, some very specific ones, date and time normalization to a standardized time zone, as well as rendering the chat messages or the messages themselves to a format that sort of summarizes them in a near native look and feel. So first and foremost, the graphical culling element that we can get into. If I want to go in here and filter by a particular message type, maybe I want only standard text messages, SMS messages, I can go in here and quickly and easily filter by that. Maybe I want to look at a particular year of interest, and we've gone ahead and pre-populated a field for year as well as a field for month and year, just to make some of those culling exercises easier for folks. So if I wanted to pick these couple of months here, just as an example, I can quickly and easily filter to 2019 and 3/2019, just as an example. Okay, and then I'll just maximize this so we have a little bit more real estate here and can kind of see. And why don't I drill in and just give you a general sense here. As you can see, we've sort of populated some basic metadata fields from the messages themselves. We have time information. We actually have what type of a message it was, whether it was an iMessage from an iPhone or from another type of platform. We're supporting things like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, etc. We even have a directional field here indicating whether the message was an inbound message to that particular phone's owner or an outbound message. And then you can actually see the text that was associated with it. Then going over here, we have some of the correspondence-related fields, and we've done our own name normalization efforts, which I'll show you in a minute, related to that. And then we even preserve the some of the fields that come out of the forensic software, specifically whether messages are deleted or whether they are recovered from being deleted. Okay. And then we can drill down a little bit further. I'm just going to bring in a few more items here. And as I drill down into this, I can kind of see some of these items here actually span some of the images that were sent. So for example, if I bring up this particular chat summary here, what we're actually looking at is a PDF rendering that shows a conversation that spanned SMS and MMS technologies. This particular one has 22 messages in it. It spanned over 2 different parties and was 64 minutes in length. And we can see who those parties were listed up at the top here. We see the first message that was sent, the last message that was sent, and then if I were to scroll through this, we can actually see these renderings broken out very similar to how they would have been on the mobile device, where we're preserving the coloring as it would be on a standard mobile device, the green and the gray. We're preserving the right-hand side and the left-hand side based on ownership of the device. And you can see we've actually drawn the rendering of the image here, so that that's all visible. And one of the things that we've also done here is we actually take the messages themselves and we break them up into more meaningful conversations. So if you were to take a entire thread communicating with several people, as it would be on the mobile device, it would just scroll and scroll forever, potentially going back for years. What we do is we take gaps in communication or lulls in communication that are 4 hours or more, and we break those into individual conversations. And that's what we're looking at here. This is a conversation that had a contiguous back and forth and actually had a break point for 4 hours before we get into the next conversation. We also give you a related items pane here that gives you a sort of a view of the messages that are underlying here, and I can expand this a little bit just to give you a little bit of a better view. But you can see here that the first message that we see here that's listed here, you can see the body of that message is right here. So if I wanted to either code the entirety of the conversation because it was all relevant, or if I wanted to get more granular and code individual messages, I have the ability to do that from the related items pane. As well, we've preserved some of these normalized names here so that at a glance you can relate this particular correspondent to the normalized name as he was the sender or recipient. Then just going back into the name normalization piece, this is also something that we've put some time into. So if I go over here to this context tab, I have a couple of options. First and foremost, devices. As we collect mobile devices, we list them here, and we give the ability to see the device. So if I drill in on this particular one, we have a GUID name that's assigned to it. We give it the make and model of the phone, which is derived from the forensic software. We assign custodialship to each of them, and then we give some type of a description to help us identify it later. And again, if we had multiple devices, even multiple devices for a given custodian, we'd be able to see those all here. In addition to that, we have this parties tab, and this is where we get into some of our name normalization efforts. So we list the same information here, the custodian, the device description, but we also add this detail in here which shows the different types of messages that could be sent, as well as what information those were sent from. So for example, if you're an SMS or an MMS message, you would potentially come from the user's phone number. If you're an iMessage, you potentially would come from the user's Apple ID. And the same would go for things like Facebook Messenger. You would have a Facebook screen name. So when we look in here, if I filter down on this one individual here, you sort of see that same pattern. So here's her phone number, as well as her Apple ID, as this particular individual spanned these technologies. And this would be a more expansive list if there were other data types in the system. We use this particular section here in a couple of different ways. First and foremost, we go in and we normalize the custodial names so that those could be pulled up, or the correspondent names, so those could be pulled up more readily within relativity. As well, if there's a situation where there's a lot of personal contacts and we don't really want those names to be present or highly visible, we can actually go in and focus our efforts on identifying all of the business contacts, then take everything else that's in the case and label those all as personal contacts. So allows us to do filtering for specific individuals, but not when they're included on a personal conversation, so on and so forth. In addition to that, this caters in well with some of our previous applications, so specifically our product that we call Snapshot, which was last year's innovation. You can see here that we've also taken the liberty of rendering all of the images to thumbnail views, and this also plays well and is very synergistic to mobile data, as sometimes the images are really important. In addition to that, we also have used this as a culling technique to segregate out personal information from business-related correspondence by identifying pictures of family pictures and non-work related images and using that to pull in the related message conversations and segregate those off. And in addition to that, certainly we get the benefit of having the number of occurrences of those images and the repetitiveness of those. We can actually filter those out so we don't have to look at the same office meme that was sent around numerous times. And that sort of concludes what we're doing from a mobile perspective and sort of the outline of the demonstration of the product.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you. That's really good stuff. I remember Snapshot from last year.
Yep.
It was really great. And
Snapshot was awesome.
Yeah, it's great to see how you incorporated it with what you have here with context.
Snapshot was one of my personal favorites, so I'm glad it's here. This looks really cool too, by the way.
Thank you.
I have a question. Just on the grouping, I know
Yep.
it sounded like you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like you said you're seeing the conversations as like where the conversation ends where there's a 4-hour gap. So that's kind of how you're slicing it. How are you keeping the family, quote unquote, family together? Is it same recipients within that time frame? Is that how you're keeping like in the related items pane?
Yeah, so basically what we're looking at is, and we don't span technologies beyond your standard SMS, MMS, and iMessage from a grouping perspective. Those three technologies we group together. We group together based on them being the same, there being the same correspondence on a message. So very similar to how they would be on the device itself. Same thing applies here where we group those together. So we basically take the conversation as it would have been on the device from the beginning of time to end of time, and then we begin slicing it into these conversations. And then we have family relationships that will basically span the messages that have attachments. We consider them to be a family. So for example, if I sent a MMS message or an iMessage and it had an image-based attachment or a file-based attachment, there's a family relationship there. And then we also have a relationship of the entirety of the conversation to the underlying messages. And then ultimately we have a relationship that goes from the messages, the conversations, to the overall timeline of all messages that were related to that. So you have the ability to sort of toggle at those different levels.
Got it. Makes sense. And then the parties tab was pretty interesting. So from there, I'm assuming I could, like, if I have my party, I could even build my searches around, you know, a specific custodian, see what numbers they have, phone numbers, different aliases, message types like that to help me dive into my data. So what I'm looking for is something specifically that maybe is, you know, a particular chat type. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, you could, if you wanted to, do a quick pivot off of the information that's here. You can export this out to an Excel spreadsheet for cross-reference purposes. So really a lot of different options here. In general, this would be a listing of any of the correspondence that existed on the particular device across messages. So you'll see a variety of different variations depending on the type of application. We like this because it gives us the ability to say, you know, the individual was using the following 5 chat applications, or perhaps expand on chat applications based on usage. So if we were starting to see that they were using Facebook Messenger and we identified that they were using Facebook Messenger for business communication, we can pull Facebook Messenger in as a particular data source and focus our efforts on making sure we understand who the correspondents were on Facebook Messenger based on their, you know, their screen names and then ultimately determining who they really are in real life. Because some of the screen names may not be, as intuitive, and certainly phone numbers don't necessarily dictate who that individual is. So in many instances, especially if the phone number wasn't in somebody's contacts, we have to go in and sort of figure out who that number is and then associate an appropriate name to that individual. So that's some of the steps that we typically will do.
That's a good comment, and maybe more for my own edification. So in this screen we're looking at here, so the owner of the device would be Ellen, and I'm looking at the iPhone, and I can see the different messages, MMS, SMS. There's the party, which would be the number, the email address, whatever it is, and the alias is the owner of that number, email address, etc.
Yeah, or the
Got
person who corresponds to that. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, makes
You
sense.
could call it an owner in essence. In other words, I own that screen name, or I own that phone number, or I'm
Got it.
associated with might be a better way of saying it. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that'd be a lot to track. And
generally, we may not normalize all. In most mobile cases, we only see that there's a focus on a few individuals, or there's a focus on a very limited volume. So we'll focus our efforts on normalizing what is important to the case, as opposed to every communication that's ever spanned on a particular device. But we do have some larger cases that are 15, 20 mobile devices, and on those, that's millions of messages. So it can become a pretty long list here.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially bringing in a lot of different images that can get pretty hefty. Are you
Yep.
doing this with? I know you mentioned earlier. Are you doing this with solely Celebrate exports, or is there anything else that you're bringing into with this?
Yeah, right now we've standardized on Cellbrite. So we basically do an XML export out of Cellbrite, and then we directly parse that.
Got it. Can you talk a little bit about the maybe the use case and the impact this has had on customers that are using this?
Sure. So first and foremost, if we went back to sort of the originating formats that we were working with, we historically were producing either an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF-based report over to clients, and most of the time we would either load that as itself as a record in relativity, or it would just be dealt with completely separate and apart. So being able to now have a timeline that spans both mobile messages and email and other data, and seeing them and being able to sort them chronologically is really been valuable for our clients. So for example, somebody may be saying something in email format and then saying something completely different behind the scenes in text messages, and now being able to correlate that particular time slice and look at those events right in line is super helpful. As well, when we start dealing with high volume, dealing with those in spreadsheets and dealing with them in sort of the older legacy formats that were available just wasn't practical. Dealing with 20 mobile devices would be very, very long PDF-based reports. In addition to that, being able to consolidate the technologies, SMS, MMS, iMessage, as they would have been on the device, is something that's been a real win for our clients. That created a lot of confusion. Basically, if you're on an iMessage conversation and you go through an area of low reception, you potentially would have that message pop out of that thread, find it standalone later, and it just it becomes very confusing. So having that contiguous message is something that's very important as well. And we've seen approximately 600% growth of this since November of last year. So in the last 9 months, we have this deployed in almost 40 cases now. That's contributed to about 600% growth.
Got it. So just over the last 8 months, it's been deployed to that many workspaces. Got it.
Yep, 40 workspaces.
Is this a deployable rep that you have where it's just going to contain the tabs, the views you set up, stuff like that?
Yep, yep, it's a deployable application.
Got it. And how are you getting the data into the workspace? So you deploy your app, you have your outline. I get you get the Celebrate export. You're doing your own magic to like parse it, to normalize it, and get the fields you want. And how are you getting the data from there to the workspace?
Yeah, we're just using the desktop client just to load the metadata in. So basically, we pre-create all of the fields. It makes it easier to align to the field names that we've put into the load file. And then we're just loading it straight in.
Got it. I'm imagining you probably have a KWE with that too.
Yep.
Got it. Cool.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that.
No. We could use the import API as well, but we just haven't done the work to do that yet.
Yep.
Got it. Cool. And is that the Celebrate things? That's something you guys have your own license to, so it's pretty easy to get out what you want.
Well, yeah, so we're certainly a license holder for Cellbrite, and then the parsing tool is something that we've written standalone to go and take the XML file, parse it. We also suck in all of the entity information here, and we store those so that we can ensure that we're not duplicating the effort. Maybe we went back to the same device a second time, or a variety of different things. As well, when we segregate these parties out and such, we may have the same particular number on another person's phone. So we keep a record of all of that, and then ultimately we're able to publish this information without overriding anything that's already been accomplished.
Got it. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, sometimes there's rolling deliverables. We may start off and only deliver iMessage, SMS, and MMS, or a particular time frame was requested and we limited it to that. It doesn't happen all that often, but if we did and we had to go back and widen that, we might have the potential to override existing good work products. So we were able to be mindful of that.
Got it. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Cool. Yeah, this was really good. I don't think I have any other questions on my end. Other relativity folks have any questions, comments? I don't think so.
Okay. One
Great.
other thing I would add is that in the future, as there's maturity with the relatively short message format, there may be some adoption of that for us as well. The main focus for us was on the parsing of the messages and the sort of relationships and such, and breaking them into more meaningful conversations. So we can very easily port the work product that we have into the relatively short message format, to the JSON files, and ultimately ingest them into the relatively short message viewer if desired in the future. There's some challenges on the way that things are structured in that, and by using sort of the PDF approach and sort of the way we've broken out the messages and their relationships, it gives us a little bit more flexibility for some of the upcoming production formats.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment was kind of what was the next steps for something like this. And I mean, obviously you can see how it ties into RSMF and taking advantage of the viewer. I see you guys are on 9. Is it 9.6, 7?
Yeah, this is 9.6.
9.6, got it. I forget which version the RSMF starts being compatible with. As
Yeah,
far as
it's
the
like
short
10,
message viewer.
10 and up, 10.1.
Well, I thought that it was, and don't quote me, but I thought we could get it on 9.7. It's just you wouldn't have like that fancy new viewer. Instead, like if you ingested the RSMF, you would get the kind of static image of it. But I can verify that on my end, just so I'm not giving you wrong information. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of the next iteration of this, where it goes.
Yeah, we've been actually collaborating with you guys on the progress on the relativity short message format. So depending on the the version that you're on, it will give you different functionality, and it just it hasn't been quite as full-fledged on the versions that are on-prem at the moment. So we're sort of as that becomes a little bit more mature, we're in a good position to update and be able to support that as well. So.